Hi, my name is Doug Schmoody and I'm a singer-songwriter. I've also been doing recordings in my home studio for about 20 years now, so I thought I'd put together a short video on recording the acoustic guitar. I certainly don't claim to be an expert, but I do have a few tips and techniques I can pass on. So let's dive into it. Before we get into the recording, I'm going to chat a little bit about the space and the guitar. As far as the guitar goes, you just got to be mindful that they're all going to record differently, and I found that sometimes a fantastic sounding acoustic guitar is maybe going to be difficult to record, and I found the inverse to be true as well, where I've had a guitar that maybe I wasn't a big fan of how it sounded, maybe it had dead strings or something to that effect, but was able to record it wonderfully. So just be mindful of that. Maybe if you've got techniques and methods that typically work and you're struggling with one instrument, don't be afraid to mix it up because they will vary considerably. All right, so let's talk a little about the space. As you can see, I've got this Oral X mounted on the wall, these two panels here, and it's probably maybe hard to tell from the camera, but I'm kind of in a little bit of a U here, and I've got some felt on the walls on either side, so I'm in a little bit of a alcove or a C-shaped thing back here. I like to kind of treat this area here like you have seen. Don't want to get any of these first order reflections off the back wall here right back into the microphone. So I like to take care of that. However, behind the camera, which you can't see, the room is wide open. I've tried to record guitar in virtually dead spaces, and I just don't think it translates well. I think the guitar needs a bit of air in the room and a little bit of that to really come to life. So that's the balance that I've struck. Of course, your room and your tricks are going to be different, but that's what I've found works well for me. So the floor in here is a hard floor. I do have some rugs on there to kind of reduce some of the reflections off the floor space. As well as right beneath me, I've got a little carpet square that, one, keeps anything from coming straight beneath me back up to the mics. It also allows me to tap my foot while I record without that being picked up by the microphones. So that's the general sound treatment. Now let's get and talking about the microphones a little bit. So I typically like to use two mics when I record. In this video, I'm not going to get into brands and models. I'll let you know what I'm using here, but I'm not going to get into recommendations there. There's a lot out there on the web about that. But generally speaking, I like to use for my primary microphone a small diaphragm condenser, which I have here. In this video, I'm using a Neumann KM84, which is my favorite acoustic guitar recording mic that I've tried. Again, I think the bigger priority is small diaphragm condenser. Works really well in this position. So where I have it located here is, got it pointed about the 12th fret of the guitar, right in the middle of the fretboard, and it's angled a little bit towards the headstock, which you can kind of see here. So that's the first mic. The second mic here, I either use a large diaphragm condenser, or in this case, I'm actually using an AEA N22, which is an active ribbon microphone. So this one here picks up the body of the guitar really well, kind of gets a little more of the character and warmth, and this one's a little more clinical. So this one is pointed just behind the bridge to about this area here, kind of at a bit of an angle like this. Got to be a little careful here. If this is angled too much this way and you start pointing it towards the sound hole, I've not found that to be a good way to record an acoustic guitar, man. All kinds of stuff is coming out of that sound hole, and the microphones seem to have trouble taking care of all that. So again, just a little bit behind the bridge. You can bring it up or down, up or lower bout a little bit for that particular instrument and find the happy spot. So the other piece that's important to note is what they call the 3-to-1 microphone rule. Basically what that means is you take this microphone here, the distance from this mic to the closest sound source it's picking up, which is going to be right here, is about that much, 3 or 4 inches with my calibrated fingers. So the 3-to-1 rule says that this distance is your one. Your second microphone needs to be 3 times or more that distance from this mic, aka this distance from here to here needs to be 3 times this distance. So get my calibrated fingers out again. 1, 2, 3. I'm a little bit more than 3-to-1, so I'm good to go. And the reason for that is you will get some phase cancellation and some phase issues if this microphone is picking up the exact same signal here at a little bit different time. So you try to get them a little bit of space to attenuate some of that frequency or some of that signal so you don't get phase cancellation and phase issues. So that's the gist of the mic setup. Enough talking, let's do a little recording. I'm just going to do some strumming here to get some sound waves into the computer, and then we'll go over there and take a look at that and talk about some of the aspects over there. All right, so let's take a look at these audio files. So here you've got guitar 1, you've got guitar 2 here. I've got them labeled KM84 and N22, so I know which microphones I'm using. I've got one panned hard left and one panned hard right. Let's also talk about recording levels though. So when you get all set up to record, really the first thing you're going to need to do is check your levels on your mic preamps. What I like to do that is, if we go over here on my audio tracks here, you can tell this is Pro Tools. I'm sure you can do this in other DAWs, but you can switch here between your volume of your track and your peak, and then you can use option click here to reset those. And then if you play your track, you can see Pro Tools is going to record and display the peak right here. So you can see this one's a minus 10.6 and minus 9.5. So first of all, in terms of where you want to be, I don't think you want your peaks typically, at least in my experience, to be above -6. I like them, or to be louder than -6, I should say. I like them to be in this area, -10, -12, somewhere in that area. And also try to level match them as best you can. You can obviously correct some of that and tweak that a little bit with the volume faders when you get into the mixing phase, but I do like to get them close. So let's talk a little bit about phase. That's the next piece I want to cover here. So if I zoom in on those audio files, you can just really visually observe whether or not you're in or out of phase. So I take a look at, these waveforms here, one on top of another, and you can see that, this is the same information in time, and you can see in this case I'm going up. In this case, it's a negative amplitude. So these would be considered out of phase, so you might be getting some cancellation here. So again, you may be able to hear this. Typically you can, but I like to go in and just visually verify it. So how to correct that? Well, you can typically on a mic pre, there is a phase button, so you can just select whichever one you want. It doesn't really matter. Flip the phase, and then when you record this or redo this this track here, you will get the recordings in phase. However, sometimes it's after the fact, and that's not an issue. You can do that as well. So you can pretty much pull up any EQ. Most of them will have this. This is one of the standard Pro Tools one band EQ, and this button right here is your in and out of phase. So I've got a bypass, but if I take it off a bypass and I hit this button, now it will flip the phase on this one track that I have this plugin initiated on, and will correct that issue. So just leave that phase flipped and you're good to go. The final piece that's pretty typical is some high-pass filter, which is basically what it sounds like. You are allowing some of the high frequency at some cutoff frequency to pass through, and frequencies below that are eliminated or significantly attenuated. And so you can kind of see from this curve, I've got it set at 176. That may be a little high. You can play with it as you go, but somewhere around 100 hertz. Certainly you don't need much below that. Typically for the acoustic guitar, you're just going to get some mud and noise in your tracks. It's especially critical in the microphone setup that I showed you, with the microphone that is pointed at the body of the guitar. One, it's a large diaphragm condenser, or in the example I showed, it's a ribbon mic. Either way, it's going to pick up a little more of the low frequency than the small diaphragm condenser. Additionally, it's pointed at the body of the guitar, where you're going to get a lot more low frequency than the one that's pointed at the neck and up towards the headstock a bit. So again, critical on the second one microphone in this example, but honestly, I would recommend you do some sort of high pass filtering on both the microphones. just to reduce that mud in your track, and you're gonna get better results overall in your mix when you do that, in my experience. That's the gist of it. Like I said, I've got them panned here, hard left and hard right. If I was only going to use one of these, it was a dense mix, I would mute this one and probably center this one, depending on what the mix dictated. But that's the gist of how that works over here on the computer side. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that and I hope you found it informative. Really appreciate you guys checking out my video. If you're interested, check out some more of my videos on my YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe, etc. Take care and thanks again.